Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. We're doing something a little bit different here. I've got my good friend here, Devin Jeffrey, and we're going to be talking about an interesting topic that I think, hopefully, I don't know, we'll see how it goes over. This will be kind of an interesting possible series that we may very well get into doing. That was Jason Mraz doing I'm Yours, and currently, right now, the two of us are yours. Here's the thing that kind of happened and how this sort of played out, I think, with my good friend, Devin Jeffrey. That's a lot to say.
It is a lot to say.
It's okay. It's all right. We're going to do it anyway. But he basically it's been nagging at him, this whole concept of wanting to have a discussion about some of the differences between men and women and the way our energies are, maybe the way we sometimes process the world around us. So for you ladies out there, this is going to be wonderful because it's going to give you some insight into kind of how we are. And in a lot of ways, I think guys are simple, but our complexity is in our simpleness, I think, really.
Yeah.
And then women are, you guys are awesome. And we're going to do our best at least to give our perspective and some of our thoughts and understandings into how that all plays out. And then, of course, we will close out with a song. But the important question that I really wanted to get into and get Devin talking about is this has been bugging and pestering you. And
yeah,
it became something that you felt like you really needed to talk about. And I guess the big question is why do you think that is? Or where, I mean, obviously a lot of my audience is very spiritual and very into kind of those aspects, and you are too, and that's a big part of how we became friends to begin with. But how did that play out with you? How did that work?
Well, I've been doing hypnotherapy and personal change work with men and women for years, and over the last, I'd say 8 or 9 years, I've been working with more couples. And it's really come to the forefront that there is a giant chasm between men and women today in the way that they understand each other and the way that they communicate. And if anything else, what I like to do is to be able to help two people, especially when they really love each other and they're just missing each other, maybe just, missed it by that much.
Right.
And, and if I can offer some clarity and bridge the gap in the communication and make that relationship thrive, it is very fulfilling for me. And I hope to bring that to my personal relationships. I'm not always perfect either, obviously. So, clarity over agreement, but understanding those differences. And they're not as complex as people make them out to be. A lot of self-help books out there, a lot of videos and so on. You've got feminism going on right now, and there's a big pushback with, the male movement. But, rather than fighting, it's like, hey, time out. Let's communicate. Let's talk, and let's really find out what we have in common, how we communicate, and how we can communicate better to make our relationships with our mother, our father, our sister, brothers, and of course our partners, whether you're gay or straight, better and long lasting, hopefully.
And I think that's been a really important, the point you bring up, and I think it's been huge lately, is there's been this large amount of divide in everything.
Right.
Everything right now. It's always so extreme. Yeah. And what's so bizarre to me is most of us don't truly live in the extremes.
Right.
We may feel strongly about our side of things, and if you're maybe on the slightly other side, then no matter what, I have to be opposite of you. But again, it's just weird perpetuation that seems to be happening everywhere in all aspects of our reality. And I think it truly has affected relationships, and I agree with you. There's definitely, feminism's definitely been on the rise, and certainly is very, very strong, and has a voice, and rightly so. I don't really wish to speak poorly of any of these things, but there's also this very strong pro-man kind of concept that's even coming out. There's a Catherine Strawn or something, I think her name is. There's a couple people that are doing some really amazing work and have huge audiences that are really talking about some of these inequalities that have crept into our worlds. And I agree, like you and I have talked to a lot of mutual friends, and certainly relationships have been a big part of that, and maybe helping them through certain aspects.
Right.
But I do agree, there's that whole divide mentality, that whole and we're trying to bridge that, I think, right?
Right. Well, you mentioned feminism, for instance, and so you've got your radical feminist, right? And then you've got your coffee shop feminist, right? Where if you were to speak to the coffee shop feminist, and she would say she believes in equal rights and women should have equal opportunities, but she's not necessarily going to align herself with some of the radicals, right? And I think the media has played a huge role in this, right? Where you only get attention if you're the squeaky wheel, and so the radicals are the ones who get the attention, and they give feminism a bad name. And the same with the male movement as well. And I think with anything, with politics as well, you know. So, I mean, if you put two people in a room, and you've seen plenty of YouTube videos where they do that, people have far more in common than they do, you know, apart from one another.
Absolutely.
So,
and I agree that with that in relationships, and I think sometimes many of us forget that this relationship started out in love, and that was the whole concept. And we get very caught up in some of our frustrations, some of maybe the minutia of life, and really, in a lot of cases, I think it's important to look at what are the inspiring thoughts behind this. Like, why am I really getting mad that he left his socks on the floor? Is that really the issue? And I think in a lot of cases it's not. I think that's really good when you see the manifestation of the inward feeling, and that's when you're yelling at them for something stupid, like the toothpaste cap, which they don't even have caps anymore. They're all flippy thingies, but whatever. But yeah, it's that whole concept of I'm getting frustrated over crazy things, and then if you let that build up over time, then suddenly it becomes...
And it does build up over time because we're so busy. You know, if you have children and you're a stay-at-home mom and you're so busy taking care of the kids in the home, and if you're, you know, the man of the house, as they say in quotes, and you're out working, or both working for the, you know, and you got daycare or what have you, you know, there's very little time for yourself to be intimate. And typically relationships start out where it's all about the other person.
Right.
You think about them night and day. You roll over in the middle of the night and you get the warm and fuzzy. I mean, I'm getting like, you know, goosebumps right now thinking about it because we've all felt that feeling. And we're all on our best behavior in the beginning. And I'll just dive right into it. A lot of women will accuse men of being on good behavior for the first several months, and then they turn into, you know, a jerk. Well, I can understand how a man does shift his mode, because when a man is in the mode of pursuit, he's single focused and his attention is on her, and he will do everything he can once he makes a decision that he wants her.
Right.
And men typically make that decision pretty darn quick, you know, where I want her, and I don't care if, you know, she's got this quality or that quality that may not be perfect. I want her. All the baggage and everything, and then make a decision.
Right.
Where women typically, and this isn't always, but again,
we're
we're
talking
talking
generalizations. There's always exceptions to the rule for anyone out there. So if you're the exception, you don't need to let us know you're the exception.
That's right.
We know there's exceptions out there, but yeah, the generalities are what we're dealing with.
Right. And women tend to process more in layers, like peeling an onion. You know, like you mentioned the socks. Well, okay, so he leaves the socks, but you know, I really like this guy, and so it takes them a little bit longer. So when a man shifts from, okay, she's mine, we're in a relationship, he can now shift his focus to something else, because he cannot maintain focus on her in that same capacity for the rest of his life. He has to now turn outward to the world and make a living to provide and to protect his family and or his lady. And so he will shift direction.
Right.
But the misunderstanding for the most part, and this isn't always the case, but it's for her, and it's to provide for her. And the women that I've worked with, and Allison Armstrong, who she's wonderful. I've learned of her via Dennis Prager. Her book Keys to the Kingdom really tells a story about that women really have everything they want if they know what a man is doing, why they're doing it, in the stages that they go through. But men typically are very single focused, and women, you know, are thinking of a million things at once. You know, I have ADD, so I tend to think of a million things at once. Although I look to be very calm inside, it's a circus. You know, it's Barnum and Bailey's. But
another duck on the pond, as they say, right?
Right.
Right. On the surface, everything looks all calm, but underneath, your little feet are going a mile a minute.
Exactly right. And so, when women have all this stuff going on, you know, they feel the need to communicate and to share. And of course, when the husband comes home, he walks in the door, and men need typically, you know, kind of a timeout period, you know, a transition period when they come home or when they get to the office, 15, 20, 30 minutes just to cool it. They get their thoughts together and they can plug back in. Right. And then, you know, if the wife comes to the door, lovingly so, because she's excited he's home. Right. So this is what I communicate.
Or a break in her day, or someone to help with the kid, like, or whatever the case is, right?
It's like, John, she's excited you're home. She's been waiting for you all day.
Right.
So to jump her case is not the right thing to do. To realize your wife adores you is so important. And when I've shared this with men, I've seen tears come in their eyes. Right. And the other thing to the woman as well is, you know, give them a timeout. You know, once they both know what the other needs, she lets him kind of settle in, and then he comes and greets her, and then they have their time together.
Right.
Simple steps makes all the difference in the world. And women are not nearly as demanding as a lot of the extremists would say that they are. They want touch. They want you to listen to them.
Right.
Our nature is to fix their problems. Their nature is to...
Yes, that's a big lesson for men out there, by the way, is when you get that chance to finally listen instead of trying to fix, when you finally realize, when you finally make that connection, that's all they want. They just
Right.
they don't want you to fix their problem. If they wanted you to fix it, they'd walk up to you and say, "Hey, can you help me with?" Or "I don't know what to do, honey," or
hopefully
whatever.
they will. So
well,
do so
they
if
do
you
in
do.
some cases. There's some
Right.
things. I mean, there's
Absolutely.
whatever, but there's might be a lot of things that just want to emotionally deal with it, process it, push it out, spit it out, whatever.
But men have a nature to help fix. If a woman's trying to put in a light bulb in a public place, let's say the coffee shop that you work at part time, and she just starts doing it, you'll see about every man in the room turn to kind of physically start to gesture like, does she need help, and so on. And so you've got one type of woman who will embrace that and be appreciative of that because that's a man's nature, and other women will resent the fact that I can do it myself.
Right.
Well, of course you can do it yourself.
Well, but you got that. That's part of that whole movement right now, where there's that
Right.
whole this new age kind of new concept. I don't know. Feminism's such an ugly word, but whatever.
Right.
It is. I mean, it's been made ugly anyway. But the whole concept of I am very self-sufficient. I can do this myself. That's great. More power to you. And then there's still that very conservative kind of approach too, that they want to be a mom. They want to be
Right.
raised. They want to be in a
Right.
family. They want to have that white picket fence, and they want to be in love with their husband and be going to PTA meetings and all that kind of stuff. And
Absolutely.
so, I mean, yeah, there's, I think, many walks of life. And one thing you brought up earlier, and I hate to go back, but it was, I think, a good point, and I think it brings up a good first step. So you're talking about how early on in the pursuit that women and men, how men are more laser focused. They more go after them. They're
Right.
kind of trying to get them. They give them all this attention. They're buying them flowers, writing them
Right.
poems, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
And then they finally get them, and that stops. And women, I think, rightly so, at least the ones that just went through all that wonderful experience, are probably wondering, well, how do I get some of that romance
Right.
back?
Right. And I
And
think,
so, what are your thoughts on that?
and that's great. And so to make men aware that they shifted, because men just do it, but they're not necessarily conscious of it. So what I do is I point out to them, listen, this is the shift that you made. And I tell her as well. And they both acknowledge it. So you need to still do it. But if you did it as intensely as you did it in the beginning,
Yeah,
it would,
that's kind of, I think, asking a lot.
Right,
It's
and
like
she's
the
gonna go,
honeymoon
"Oh."
phase stops too. Eventually,
Right,
it's like,
right.
things,
just like making love,
Yes.
initially in the relationships, a lot of people make love like bunnies, and then it kind of slows down. Well, maybe for some it doesn't actually, but more power to you.
Yeah.
But if it does, that's normal and that's
Right,
okay.
yeah.
But I think knowing that that's part of it is what's important.
Well, that's where in I think a lot of relationships, people get in trouble early on, especially guys,
Right.
because we're so physically driven in the
Sure.
first sense. I mean, a lot of us do have depth and abilities to care and to have tender sides and all these kinds of things. No, him, that's not me. No, that's me. But yes, they forget that they need to be kind of emotionally. Therefore, I have no idea where I was going with this.
No, that's okay.
It's his fault.
It is my fault, but I'm complimenting you
Yeah,
because
no.
you do have that quality.
Well, yeah.
But when men lose focus of what's important to his lady, then there's going to be a problem eventually, and that's where there's communication. Ongoing communication is really, really important. But chemistry in the beginning is what you're talking about,
Yes,
that
yes.
drive and so on. So in the beginning, you've got that chemistry, and that's what drives all of us.
Oh, and we start to fall back on the important thing. That's where I was going with
Right.
that. Is early on, it's physically focused. You are going kind of after it for those reasons, but then really after a period of time, that stuff starts to wear off.
Sure.
And once it's worn off, you're kind of left with the conversation, which she wants to talk anyways. I mean,
Perfect.
and I think the more you can get into enjoying having those conversations with the one you love.
And we didn't plan this, so that the first is chemistry, the second
Right.
is communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that you're right, conversation.
Yeah.
I got a text from somebody today where she was saying, I miss our talks, I miss our communication and so on, and she's in New York right now, and just hearing that, it just it puts a lump in my throat.
Right,
because
right.
It's very important to me.
Very touching.
But I have to admit too, both of us actually, and I don't mean to speak for you, so please correct me if I'm wrong. You and I have an ability to communicate in a way that most men don't. We can play, and this isn't, I won't call it male, female, but more feminine energy or male or masculine energy. we can communicate like a guy, and we can also communicate like a girl in quotes, energy wise.
Well, I think as guys, we're oddly in touch with our feminine sides as well as our masculine sides. We're
Right.
a very kind of balanced.
Anima and animus. That's right.
Yeah, very balanced
Absolutely.
mix.
Right. And that's important. So not all men can do that. So back to the expectation part, when women expect a man to be like a woman and to communicate openly and share their feelings and so on, when he didn't demonstrate that in the beginning, then she's setting herself up for disappointment.
Yeah.
Where, she's like, well, why doesn't he talk? And why doesn't he share things and all this? My question is, did he ever?
Right.
And if the answer is no, then that's generally his male nature. Not a bad thing.
Well, that's how he was. That's how he
Right.
was when you started with him.
Right.
I mean, it's like that. If you want more out of a relationship, then again, women kind of do some of the same things that guys do. We
Right.
get into relationships for some of the wrong reasons, and maybe your thing's security, or maybe your things are sense of humor, or maybe your things are sensitive, or they're super macho, or that monster truck they drive. Whatever the case is, whatever.
Yeah.
There's times where I think I kind of understand women, and then immediately following that, I find I don't understand. And you ladies are awesome in that regard. I love it.
No,
It's one of the coolest things.
Women are the most beautiful creatures on the face of the earth.
Oh,
I mean, no question in my mind.
It's like cheating. That's like, of course.
Well, it's true though, because they don't even give themselves credit. They some of them try so hard to look so good, and they don't need to. I mean, a lady, a young woman in sweats and a baseball cap and a ponytail, to me, if she's got a smile on her face and she's happy, is more attractive than someone who gets all made up. Both are nice, and I think it's important that a woman still wants to look good for her man.
Yeah.
And it is important, and vice versa. You don't want to let yourself go. It's very important. But
Your poor microphone.
But yeah, the microphone kind of moved here. But it's very important to do that. But what I'm saying is that if you communicate to one another and you say, listen, I feel like we've kind of fallen down in this area, and I'd like to improve it. It's important. But knowing the different communication styles, how a man communicates versus how a woman communicates. And a real quick example would be, if you ask a man a surface level question, he will typically give you a very quick surface level answer.
So what's a surface level question in your mind?
Where's the hammer?
Okay, that's
Okay?
great.
Right. But if you ask him how his mother makes him feel when she comes over and visits.
I'll tell you where the hammer's at.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so that was the answer to the question. Probably in the back of her. No. So the thing is that it's not that a man is not in touch with his feelings. He doesn't necessarily live there as often as women do. But what a woman needs to realize is when she does ask a man a serious question like that, it needs to be at the right time. Again, they're single focused. We're single focused, so it has to be when we're available and receptive. Receptivity is the key to everything. And then,
well, in a place emotionally where we can open that up. That's
absolutely,
huge.
absolutely.
Because there's times where we don't want to be emotional, like that we don't swim in emotions all day long. And I think one of the key things that will break me. This has happened to me numerous times. I don't know if you're the same, so I'll let you speak to it. But when I could be stressed at work, fine. I could be stressed with stuff at home, maybe stressed with family matters, fine. When you start throwing emotional stresses in there, stuff that's stressing me out emotionally, I crumble.
It's
too much. It's too much for me. I can't do it. I think women are far more capable of swimming in emotion than we are, so I think they sometimes forget.
Yeah.
And, I've heard it said as a negative, like men can't multitask. All right, that we are really good at single focusing, so let's not take away.
Well, it's not a competition.
And it's different. It's just the way we process the world differently. You guys women compartmentalize, and you do so in an amazing way that we can't comprehend. But we are so good at, like, you give me 15 things to do, I'll take care of all 15 of them. I won't do them all at the same time though, but I will get them done. And I think that's that difference that I think we really need to learn to embrace. And you and I think, of constantly appreciate some of the things that are stereotypical, maybe in the more negative fashion. And it's like, nah, but I get that. That's part of what makes women beautiful.
And this is why male nature and female nature either with a man and a woman, or a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, works because they complement one another.
Right.
And because a man is single focused, male energy is single focused, and feminine energy is more diverse. It's a complement.
Yeah,
it's not a competition.
absolutely.
It's you're good at this and
Yeah.
I'm good at that.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate.
And that's again that gets back to my point earlier, where there's such this divide.
Right.
Everyone wants to be on one side or the other, and it's like, no. Let's work together. Let's
Right.
be an awesome team.
That's right.
I mean, that's
right.
You're really good at this aspect of it. Then we're gonna have you work on that, and
Right.
I'm gonna take care of this over here because I'm really good at it, and then we'll mix in the middle when we need to.
But when couples get competitive, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
And that happens
Well,
when
it's ego based too. You'd probably agree in most cases.
Absolutely, it is. And and today in today's world, women are so successful in the workforce, and if they both are working, and she's suddenly making more money or a lot more money, that is not traditionally what a man is used to, and that's not what at least our generation was grown up being used to. And so, for those couples, you need to communicate through that. So to your communication point, the chemistry, the communication, and the third is the compatibility.
Right.
How compatible are you? And we change over time. Our desires change over time. If you met at 19 or 20 and you had all these different dreams of what you wanted to do, when you're 45 or 50, they've changed.
Yeah.
Right. And if they haven't changed, that could be a little scary.
And to speak to your compatibility aspect, I think there's the whole side of it too, where as you're changing, they're changing. You guys are changing in a congruent kind of way, a way that you can keep kind of working together. That's what compatibility works out to be long term. Not, I don't know, not that we can get along fine. And you want to play cards, and I'm okay with playing cards, or I want to go to a movie, and I'm okay. I like movies too. It's like it's bigger than that. It's kind of that whole long term, because like you said, you get to that period of time, 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road, and you are very different than you were prior.
Pat Allen, Harvard-trained psychologist, she does little seminars here in Costa Mesa and has a radio show. She talks about this a lot, and I don't want to misquote her, but I believe she talks about how you need to renegotiate about every 2 years to find out, because it is a negotiation. It is a relationship relating to one another. And we're so busy and we're so blindly in our own world that if we don't communicate and we don't relate to each other, then we're going to have problems.
Right.
Where you've gone this way and I've gone that way. We don't know for 20 miles. We look around, where is that other person? Right. And that happens emotionally. It happens sexually. It happens psychologically and spiritually. And the way to avoid that is not as complex as people think. And I know a lot of people will think this is very Pollyanna, but it's not. When you wake up in the morning and you look at your partner and you ask yourself, how can I love this person better today? What can I do that's good for the relationship?
Right.
Rather than what's good for me? What's good for the relationship? It's a triangle. The relationship is here, and the man is here, and the woman is here. What is good for the relationship? If you can do that, you will not lose each other.
Right.
Even if you end up in divorce at some point, it'll be in a loving way.
Well, or better than the horror stories many of us have heard.
Right.
I mean, or even seen.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So chemistry, communication, compatibility, and to figure out what you want from life and from a partner on the front end is so important.
Now, what do you say about these cases? Because we've talked about this a lot too, and you get these situations, because I think this is very appropriate to my audience. So if anyone has made it this far into the video, or maybe this is where we cut into a part two, but when you have a situation where a man and a woman, and one of them is basically spiritually waking up,
right,
and the other has not.
Yeah.
These are the times where it starts to become very tricky, because compatibility is truly starting to be left behind.
Yes.
And you can't force someone to change, but we've talked about manifesting techniques that you can try, and certainly if they're receptive to that, that very well might be partially, if you're envisioning from the end and you're seeing and imagining this person kind of behaving in such a fashion that feels like it's in line with the direction you're going, then cool. But then again, we start to run into a problem also when you start trying to define how another person's behaving, which I think is dangerous.
So if someone starts along that spiritual path and they're having their own awakening, and there could be several types of awakenings, not only spiritual awakenings, right? Someone may discover physical awakening where they want to lose weight and get in shape, and they go to the gym, and they just, they're like, I want to eat right, I want to exercise, and they're just, I want to feel good in my body. So there's several types of awakenings. Again, that's part of the relationship. It's like, hey, sweetie, this is what's really getting me going lately, and I want you to know, and I'd love you to be a part of it, and to always let that partner know that they are welcome to go along for the ride. And if they don't want to, give them the freedom not to.
Right.
And it's something that she goes and does this and he goes and does that, and it's something you can bring to the marriage. It's something you can, and you know, and I'm 51 years old. I've never legally been married before, and I'm still a fan of marriage. I'm a fan of monogamy. And I think that
we're not going to talk about your illegal marriages.
no, my illegal marriages. But the thing is that partnering and that ability to share things. You go this way and I go that way, and we bring it back to the relationship and we share it in an exciting way. That's where you can have an awakening in and of itself, really.
Right.
So there are, of course, awakenings that go way over the edge. You know, it may not be practical or pragmatic to, you know, I want to go to Bali for 20 years or 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is. Well, we've got 3 kids. What are you talking about? There is an ecology to it where you need to be practical. And that's part of the marriage. Again, look at what's good for the marriage. Right. It's not good for the marriage to do that. It's not good for the family.
And from a spiritual standpoint, I think it's also a good time to remind people that you are independent of the other. So what you're doing to manifest in your life, what you're doing spiritually within your life, they don't necessarily have to. And it kind of gets back to us, like being angry about them leaving their socks on the floor. Like, there's something else that's going on here. And if we've gotten to this point where you feel like you're evolving and this is how your anger is manifesting with your mate, then there's a good chance we need to take a step backwards and go, holy crap, like I love this person. What am I... What can I? How can I approach them? You should know your other person significantly well enough to know what direction you're going to go, how you can approach them, and at least try to get them in a conversation. But I think it goes back to, like you said, communication.
Right. Absolutely.
Let's talk about it. Let's get it out there. Let's try not to be hurtful, because I don't believe that ever helps anything. No. If you're trying to get a point across and you're name calling or anything weird or finger pointing, then
and we all do it at times.
No, absolutely.
We lose our temper.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
People shut down. I think you know, yelling isn't good. I've done it. Having a temper tantrum isn't good. I've done it. But it's typically when the other person shuts down completely.
I'm doing it right now.
You know, when people shut down, you know, that silence is violence thing. It can really drive the other person crazy, man or woman.
That's what I see. I freak people. That is the one thing. I'm like, and you've seen me. I work at a coffee shop on weekends, so it's just kind of funny. But I am generally a very happy, positive, upbeat.
Absolutely.
Nice to be around for the most part.
Yeah.
But when I'm going through one of my moments, man, I crawl into myself. I don't want anyone else around me. I don't want anyone's help, generally. And it freaks people out because I get quiet.
Right.
That's when people know there's something wrong with me, is when I get quiet.
Right. It's could be, you know, and that is a male behavior where you go into the cave.
Yeah.
And you're going into the cave to regroup.
And well, for my emotional reason, I want to disconnect everyone else's emotional input on me. Let me deal with where I'm overloaded right now, and then I'll be fine.
Because the input's too much, you can't handle.
No,
anymore.
I can't handle anymore.
So, that's right.
Keep it away from me.
It's you're either going to explode or you need to withdraw.
Then you start snapping on people, and they're like, well, "What's that about?" It's like, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Yeah, I know. It's not about the socks. I think that's probably the name of the show.
Not about the socks. I like that. Not about the socks. Actually, will be the name of the show.
Yeah.
I like that.
But no, you're right, and so. Try to communicate respectfully. Now, it brings something up, though, you know, whether you're spiritual or whether you're into Zen or meditation and so on, getting angry is okay, too.
Yeah, no, totally.
You know,
absolutely.
getting pissed off
I've done
is
shows
all right.
on that. Like, I've done shows on that. There's definitely, without a doubt, that anger can lead to things.
Yeah.
Anger can be a very changing behavior and a very powerful emotion. Now, using it in a bad way, you know, harming people or, you know, kicking puppies or babies, probably not a good idea.
Or punching a refrigerator. I did that a couple of weeks ago.
My knuckle is not where it belongs because I found the hardest part of the wall, apparently. Well, that knuckle did anyway.
Yeah, the refrigerator has a dent in it. Yes. And I get to own that dent now on my refrigerator. Nice. So I'm proud of that.
Yes, that's a beautiful dent. You should draw like little, you know, make a face out of it or something. Yeah, well, give it character.
Well, you know, it's because you've got so much pent up energy that it needs to come out, and so that's why guys will throw things. You know, when little boys even throw things or men throw things. Not at people, but down in a way. It's really a sense of disarming oneself and releasing an energy. So it's very normal, and it just, like you said, it needs to be, you know.
Well, there's healthier ways to do that too. The gym, you know, go for a walk. You know, but yeah, of course. I mean, there are times where
they have refrigerators at the gym.
Well, it's like that's why we don't do it often, though, right? It's like one of those mistakes you make once in a while, and you're like, I don't want to do that again. Yeah, it's not a good approach.
But not shutting down and trying to communicate, or saying, listen, I know this is important. I want to talk to you about this, but I'm not in a place.
Right.
You have to be receptive. And usually if you have a reasonable partner, they'll say, okay.
Yeah.
But you just shut down and walk away rather than saying, I can't deal with this. If you, I can't deal with this right now. It's important to me. We will talk about it. I'll get back to you. And you do. And you show consistency.
That's the key part.
And
the other side of that too is, by the way, is if I'm asking to allow me to just deal with what I'm going through, let me.
Right.
Because if you don't, then that makes me want to. I got to deal with this differently next time. Next time I can't go down this path because this didn't work. And like if I am already flustered, this is So it's one of those things where. And we got to do this. We'll have to get like a lady in here too with us.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I think it'd be so awesome to have that extra voice for we're two dudes speculating. You've done a lot of research, far more than I have. I've talked to a lot of people. I think that's where my gift is with it. But like he's out quoting stuff, Mr. Smart Guy over here with I've read books. I can't read. No, I'm just kidding. I totally can. But yeah, no, it's I think it's really,
and most of the things that I have learned over the last 15 years are by women, actually. They're things I've learned from women about men. Back to, Allison Armstrong. The first time I heard this woman on the radio, I wanted to marry her.
Yeah.
I just hearing that voice, and she knew more about me than I knew, but when she said it, then I knew it. I was absolutely flabbergasted. Today I had a session with somebody, and she's in her late 40s and very nice, very giving, caretaking type, very attractive woman. And she said, I don't know what kind of questions to ask, him, the person that she's dating. Sure enough, I went ahead and pulled up 101 questions from Allison Armstrong's website. And there's 101 questions you can ask men. And I've shown...
I'm betting there's more than that.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But the sad part is, I was never asked a single one of those questions my entire life.
Really?
Not one.
I'll have to look up that list.
Not one.
Can you give me one? Give me one good one. I'm curious.
Well, growing up as a small child, who is your superhero, your favorite superhero, and why? And for you and I, that's a big deal.
Yeah, right. Like,
I mean, that makes you right. That makes you go in and dig deep and remember your childhood and who you looked up to and who you idolized. And was it a cowboy or was it Superman or things like that? And so, I think if we take the time to understand what it is that's important to your partner or someone you're dating and ask about them, then they will know that you're interested. Do it with intent.
Right.
Intention, like you said, listening.
Right.
Being a good listener.
Well, that's a skill. Like right there, I think that's worth pausing for the moment because listening. So we talk about communicating.
Right.
Now, a lot of communication, a lot of conversations that occur is one person talking and the other person constantly thinking about what they're already going to say next. But you need to listen. You actually need to listen to what they're saying. And trust me, here's the best part. Something will pop into your head to say.
Right.
You don't need to think about it. It's going to happen. That's if you're in a good conversation, there's break points where the other side gets to talk.
Sure.
And magically, crazy things pop into your head and you start having conversations.
Absolutely. But one thing that can cause somebody to shut down is if the other person does all the talking and they want to interject and they don't have an opportunity, then they check out, stop listening, and the conversation dies. True. And then it's one way. And so it's not that that person was intending to shut that person down. They may be unaware of themselves. They could be excited or really be interested in something. There's some people.
They could be one of those personalities too. We've all met those
much.
People. That's all they do is talk about themselves. Like
right.
That you're their audience.
Right.
And you know that when you hang out with them for the 5-10 minutes, and then you're like, yeah, I got house. Yeah. Cat's on fire. I gotta go.
I know, and you hate doing that, but you avoid those people.
Well, they suck your energy, and that's just one of the 4 ways I've talked about before. Or at least I think it was James Redfield that talks about I think the 4 ways that you can suck energy from someone: the interrogator, intimidator, poor me, and the aloof. I think
right.
4.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've read books too. But yeah, I think when you become that kind of personality type where you're taking energy from others, you're one most likely not necessarily in my audience right now. You might be because of Facebook and stuff. That's very possible.
It's very possible.
But yeah.
So we talked about the chemistry, the communication, the compatibility, and
the triune.
Yeah, it's really important.
And then what
to
can
know.
I do for the relationship? That's I think a key.
Yeah, I think so too. So
that's a key question.
A male. That's great that you brought that up. The male aspect of that is to protect, provide, and cherish. Once he makes a decision that he wants her, like we talked about earlier.
PCP.
Right. PC.
Well, no, but you say it in a different order. It's PCP.
It could be PCP.
It's not as marketable, maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
Not gonna get that in a book.
But once a man makes a decision that he wants to protect someone, a woman, then I want her. He has that drive to protect her.
Oh yeah, well,
and then don't
again, mess with a man's woman or his car, right? I mean, those are like the rules.
Exactly.
Don't mess with either of those.
And then he wants to provide, and again, that's that shift, right? From pursuit to provisionals, right? And then cherishing, and that's where men need some work.
Well, we forget for sure.
The third one, the C.
Well, and back to what's good for the relationship. I guess that's maybe where you're circling that perfectly.
Yeah.
Because I think cherish is a huge part.
And a man will think he's cherishing his lady by working really hard and so on, and that is the way that men show love, is by producing and providing. And a lot of women don't recognize that, but there are other ways that women need to feel loved and to feel understood and to feel known.
Right.
They need, that they're known. Do you know me?
Their
Do you know who I am?
Yeah. And that, I think, is in any real true relationship, I think ultimately when you get close to someone, what you really want is for them to want to know you.
Right. Yeah.
I think that really is, like, as far as intimacy goes.
Right.
Or friends, like close friends, close relationships. But it's like, it's cool when someone actually cares about you and wants to know about you and doesn't really have an ulterior motive like 99.9% of all the other people that we pretty much deal with, because they're living their own lives. And I don't fault anyone else for not giving a crap about me. Don't get me wrong. It's just that's not what they're on this world for.
But herein lies the potential problem. When you think about it, your partner can only know you at the very best, and then maybe people have to play this back to understand it and listen to it. They can only know you as well as you know yourself when they're wanting to get to know you. And so if you haven't done the investigation and the self-actualization to grow and to know who and what you are and what you're about, they have an expectation to want to know these things about you.
Right.
Again, the questions. And you may not have done the investigation. So a lot of women will think a man is withholding and not sharing these things. And maybe a man hasn't actually done the deep investigation work because they've been too busy.
Well, we're not necessarily known for volunteering everything anyway. That's not really how we're wired. That's not how the business world works. That's not, like, you're not rewarded for volunteering.
Don't show your cards.
Extra info.
No, so we protect ourselves.
It's early on in our lives we learn, just like if we fall down, we get back up. Like, we don't cry. That's not that's just how we were brought up. We get up and walk it off, man. Yeah, it hurts. Like, just walk it off. Give me a second. That's why guys are so freaking ridiculous when it comes to going to the doctor.
Right.
Like, it's gangrenous. No, it's fine. I've got some ointment on it,
It's true. And I think a lot of that is because that boys and girls are treated differently at a young age, and we're conditioned.
And that's changed a lot, by the way.
Sure.
And that's probably a whole separate show that we can maybe get into.
Sure.
But the way things have changed there is amazing.
It is, absolutely.
It's unreal.
But one thing that a woman can do is, again, the man has got to be receptive.
Right.
And is it a good time? And then when you do ask a question, really, really wait for them to respond, because it's not at the surface like it is for women, most women. They need to dig down. Right. They need to find their feelings and find their answer, and it takes them time. And it'll seem like, are you kidding? We could have watched a movie by now. I'm waiting for this guy's answer. Just wait.
Right.
If he's quiet, he's thinking, and he's going down and he's digging down to his feelings and his emotions, and then digging into the dusty vaults. And you know what? He just may not have an answer.
Right.
And then when he answers you, don't interject or interrupt. Wait, there's more. If you really want to know.
And I think a good point to bring up here too is, like, for my audience too, so at least from my YouTube side, a lot of the spiritual aspects of us, especially the men in the audience, like, these aren't necessarily our typical traits. We tend to, as you start to become more in line with your chakras, we've talked about, when you start to kind of really open yourself up, you really actually start to become just naturally more concerned with others.
Right.
And when you get into relationships, you're far more present and authentic, to use a couple words that you're very, very fond of. But you're really more involved in that relationship. So understand that there are people out there. Of course, not you understand, but everyone understand that we know that there's people out there that you're not necessarily what we're thinking, but are talking about. But you know someone. You maybe are involved with someone. Maybe it's your relative. Maybe it's your brother. Maybe it's your mom. Like, these interactions are key because all of us are interacting. You have a boss maybe that's the opposite sex. Like, all of us are dealing in these relationships. So, again, these things, I think, apply across the board. And I think sometimes it's good to realize that we're not necessarily saying that you're in this, very caveman-esque, unable to talk. Like, nah, you're probably very communicative, but you certainly know someone who's not, or maybe you're with someone that's not, whatever the case is. So these are really, really good points, I think, to help.
Right, and I think, and we got to give women some credit. They especially after many years of marriage, they know what their men are capable of for the most part, and that they've seen sides of them that no one else has seen, generosity and love and honor and things like that. And when they do see that side of their man, let them know it, because nothing makes a man happier than being admired by his woman.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Looked up to and admired, and loyalty.
Appreciated, liked, loved, cared. Like, that's just it's like such a glowing kind of feeling for a guy when you know you've done your lady right. I think is really kind of how it comes from our side of it. So however you guys reciprocate that to us is really the key. But I think for us, like, that's really important. And I guess as a woman, it's probably a very good idea to try to straight communicate to your man, like, what are the things that kind of make you feel right? Because I'll tell you what, one thing that I've seen, to bring up something that's pretty common, and I'm like oblivious to it at this point, even in my life, is the hints.
Right.
I miss hints. Like, you give me a bunch of hints, I honestly am probably gonna miss most of them. Maybe they start to get a little more crazy, and eventually they just smack you in the face with, you're like, oh, shoot, you wanted me to actually throw that away. I'm sorry. Like, I had no idea that's what you were saying when you were like, hey, that thing's on the floor. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Anyway, so again, it's one of those where...
And men like direct communication.
Oh, my Lord, we need it. We need it.
But women are very good at subtle hints with each other, especially.
Oh, Lord, they understand each other. They got like a language, and it's great.
It is, but we don't understand.
No, we didn't get the book. We weren't allowed to read it. It's like hidden, forbidden knowledge or something.
But it's neat to know that they can do that, and but it's equally as important to know that we can't. And so when a woman wants us to pick up on subtle clues, and she's disappointed in her man, whether she intends to or not, she's looking at him as a woman and expecting him to behave like a woman, or like a female energy, I should say.
Well, yeah.
And it's not fair because he's not wired that way.
Right.
So
yeah, you're kind of coming at him at a disadvantage. You're like making him multitask when he's like, he's like, so.
Absolutely. And guys, though, if you did bring flowers and send cards and write poetry and do those things in the beginning, do it. It's a wonderful thing to do.
Careful with the chocolate. That's one of the fun ones. Because wait, you trying to make me fat? Like, I've heard that go both ways. Like, because I know most women love chocolate.
I just respond. I didn't buy it for you. I bought it for me.
Yeah, totally, right? Exactly.
I was hoping you'd say that.
I wasn't planning on sharing it with you, sweetheart.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing, men aren't nearly as concerned with the way that their women gain weight or look as they age that women are concerned. We love them no matter what, and it just doesn't matter.
No, that's one right now that I can hear a lot of women going, no, that's not true. And I actually would say that in most cases, if the man truly loves you, and it's not,
it doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's a trip, and I know I've kind of joked always that women actually put makeup on for other women.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you guys are unfortunately very mean to each other when it comes to that competitive female nature.
Absolutely. Hair color, the nails,
most of us guys don't. How many guys have said, oh, you changed your nail color to gray or whatever the hell, right? Or, oh, you cut off an inch of your hair. Like, we don't even, you got to cut like a foot off. Like, we don't, like, you suddenly come in and you're like Sinead O'Connor. We're like,
there you
did
go.
You shave? What happened? Right. Something changed.
Absolutely.
Like, we're not good on the subtle.
But that's a good quality of men, Again, it's back to that. I want her.
It's
us. And he made a choice. He made a decision.
Good or bad, whatever. But it is who we are.
Right, and men typically stick to that commitment and want to provide and protect and cherish her and make her happy. So it's really important that she lets him know, you make me happy.
Yeah, and I think that's good because you got to work through the years. There's this one thing I've heard from all relationships that have gone any serious length of time is it's not easy. No. I mean, there's definitely going to be times where you're going to be challenged, where you're going to be asked to expand and grow yourself, which might mean having an uncomfortable conversation, which might mean being honest about something that you don't particularly want to be honest about. Maybe a skeleton's coming up out of the closet, and you got to try to get through this together.
Right.
Sometimes these things happen.
Well, compromise, morals, values, what's good for the relationship, what's not good for the relationship. And that's where, again, in my therapy, I've had just some real direct communication with people. Where, for instance, where one guy didn't think it was a bad idea to be friends with the girlfriend that he cheated on with still, and he's with this other gal. Yeah. He's like, well, we're just Facebook friends. Yeah. You used her to cheat on me, and you're her Facebook friend. Yeah. So I looked at him and I'm like, dude, really? I mean, let's just cut the bullshit. That's ridiculous. Right. And we know, and there's an old saying, if you don't know what the right thing is to do, don't do the wrong thing. Right. If you don't do the wrong, just turn it around and ask yourself, what's the wrong thing? Don't do that. And that will help you in the long run. So. Well, it kind of reminds me, and I'll probably butcher the quote. You can correct me where I do it wrong, but it's better to remain silent and have people question whether you're stupid rather than to open your mouth and prove to people that you are stupid. Yeah. And I think it's true. Sometimes it's better to not have to say something when you're dealing with one of these situations than versus always looking like a tard because you're constantly trying to justify or you're constantly trying to defend. Right. And true, and there's also and we'll probably gotta cut this because I'm realizing I should have turned the lights on. So this is like all these camera people are gonna be like, you should have better light sources. I know, whatever. I have a light. I just didn't turn it on. It was sunny when we started. But yeah, that all being said, I think it's really good to remember that these relationships, they happen on both sides. Men and women both have stereotypes, and I think we frequently forget that we got in this as a pair, and we were different. We are different. We've always been different. Probably prior to getting married, people have gotten in their fights. I mean, so I just think it's really important for people to kind of take a step back and remember the three things, which I think would probably be good to kind of round that out, right? Chemistry, right? Communication and compatibility. And really every day, make sure you're doing something that benefits the relationship. Right. Something, whatever it is, whether it's just brushing her hair over her ear, telling her you love her, or when she hops out of the shower, just going, God, you are hot. Or if you're the lady, and your man's walking out, and you say like, man, I can tell you've been working out. Just something stupid like that will go a long way with a guy. Where like if he has been going to the gym, if he hasn't, or I appreciate how hard you work for us. Yes, oh my God, thank you, or thank you for you're such a great father and a husband, or whatever, and just a little bit goes a long way. And telling your lady how beautiful she is, in that moment when she's not feeling so pretty, especially that's when they're the prettiest to me. I mean, I've told a lot of people this, and I still say this is true. But one of the times that I love to see a woman, and this comes. I work early in the morning at a coffee shop, so I literally see people roll out of bed. So the ones that come in looking like they're still pretty, and they've done nothing to them, they're literally still wearing their pajamas. So the same thing. I like to see them when they're sick. Because when you see a woman when they're sick, their true beauty is really all that's ever. It reminds you of what they probably looked like when they were little kids. Oh, they're adorable. I know there's an innocence to it. Yeah, there's a beauty that radiates out, and that's all that internal beauty. Because outwardly, when they got caked with snot and their eyes are crazy, but you were the most beautiful woman I've ever laid out, and that is really to me is like that moment when you're like, this is someone special. This is absolutely someone I could die with. So in wrapping this up, if I could make one final point, I think you can. If anybody out there has a relationship that they just want to give one more chance, one more shot, do it. Do the work. It's worth it. I'm telling you, it's a lot easier to do that than to go out and find another person, because especially in today's day and times, it's not fun to be single. It's not fun to be looking. And you fell in love with that person for a reason. Find out what that reason was, and remember it. Yeah.
And there's a lot of, I think, good things that you can try to probably do to try to reenact or re-enhance. And it shouldn't be all one person. And it can start that way, but again, go back to the communication, the triune. Like, there's got to be communication in there. We have to be talking. Do not assume the man knows what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. He may be one of the most perceptive men you've ever met and may know what you're thinking most of the time. Probably more like 50% of the time, but whatever. There's going to be lots of times where he doesn't. And if it's really important and it really does matter,
and for the men,
feed it a little.
Tell her she's pretty.
Oh,
she knows I think she's pretty.
Yeah,
No.
Tell her.
Tell her.
Bring home some flowers every once in a while. Bring home something. Make her dinner. Take the child out and give her a night where she can take a bath or what. It just once in a while, do that thing that you know she will love that you did. And
breakfast in bed. Breakfast in bed.
Lord, breakfast in bed's awesome.
You know, they like McDonald's or something, and they just run out early and grab it and bring it in bed and wake her up, and she'd be like, "What's this?" And just, I don't know. Yeah. I love you. That's what this is, and I don't do this stuff enough.
Right.
Kiss her on the cheek and go to work. She'll. I'm telling you, you'll be her hero.
And there's just this part. I mean, I have to say it, and I'm so sorry, but. It wouldn't be McDonald's, Mike. I'd probably make her something. I'm not trying to kill my woman. But
I get the Egg McMuffin without the sausage.
They're so good. That's probably that for sure is the one thing I'd eat there. But anyway, and the McRib is scarily good.
Well, I don't eat meat, so
yeah. Well, good for you. But that's not even meat anyway, so you could eat one of those. They're fake. I don't know what the hell it is.
Plastic.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, well, I don't eat
maybe
plastic either.
Plastic. So. Anyway, I want to thank everyone for joining us. This is something a little different we're doing. And we're probably going to bust this into a couple. This is going to be pretty long. I can't even read how long.
Yeah.
That's been probably an hour. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway, everyone, I wanted to thank you. Devin Jeffrey, thank you for joining me on this. I think we will definitely probably do some other stuff. And it would be fun if I can maybe get, we'll find a female that'll join us on this. We know a number of them.
Yeah, absolutely we do. I think that'd be
probably
great.
Find a couple of them out there.
Let's do it.
But yeah, thank you very much for joining me, bro. I appreciate it. We're going out with Huey Lewis and the News, Stuck With You. Oddly, kind of went with that whole relationship thought process when I did it. But thank you for joining me. It's Dan RadioStyle. We'll be doing more shows coming soon. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's true.